Before starting the video, I'd like to state that this list is completely based on my own personal opinions. If you have a different opinion, then feel free to write it down in the comment section. Number 15. Ichigo vs Gin and Aizen vs Isshin, Kisuke and Yoruichi. There are two separated fights at the same time. Aizen fights against Isshin, Urahara and yoruichi. This conflict started a long time ago and still continues to this day. On the other hand, Ichigo and Gin are part of the new generation. The fight against Aizen focuses on Aizen's strength, showing that he is borderline invincible, which of course sets up the final fight against him. At the same time, Gin tests Ichigo's determination to defeat Aizen, which is decreasing quite rapidly in this part of the story. That could be a psychological attack, but could also mean that Gin sees a potential in him and tries to push him to his limits, making him even stronger. Which actually makes a lot of sense based on this scene. Number 14. Ichigo vs Renji final fight. This battle is dynamic and fast-paced, but aside from the visuals, there's also an emotional fight. These two people actually have many things in common. Both of them are hot-headed punks who share a past with Rukia and want to surpass Byakuya. The main difference is that while Ichigo uses his past failures as a motivation, Renji tries to forget about them. Renji loses the fight both physically and mentally. After seeing Ichigo's determination to save Rukia, he realizes that he should have done the same, so he asks Ichigo to save her and joins his team. Number 13. Shinigamis vs fullbringers. After Aizen's defeat, the Shinigamis have completely disappeared from the story. However, that doesn't mean that they had abandoned Ichigo, but rather that they were preparing for the upcoming battles. And their reintroduction to the story is just perfect. It's epic and emotional, and it shows us how much they have developed not only in power but also in personality. They are ready to join forces with Ichigo once again to fight the enemy. And some of those fights are so good that they could have gotten onto this list even as standalone fights. Number 12. Ichigo vs Ginjo, the fake fight. The way this fight throws us on an emotional roller coaster is genius. The whole idea of these unknown strangers helping Ichigo was fishy from the start, but now it appears that it was all just a trap. However, this whole thing just doesn't make any sense. If they wanted to kill Ichigo, they could have done it anytime. Our confusion about what's going on reaches its climax, and then all of a sudden, Ichigo learns to control his powers and launches an all-out attack. Which is not so surprising because that's how most of his fights had gone until now. The real surprise, however, only comes later, as we find out that Ginjo is aware of Ichigo's tendency to find new inner powers whenever he is in an emergency. Ginjo intentionally plays the role of the villain to help Ichigo get stronger. The real brilliance of this fight is that after making you clueless about what's going on, it gives you the definitive answer that the fullbringers are in fact allies, even if their methods and goals might differ. This unquestionable trust Ichigo and we as the audience develop is what makes the last fight even more soul-crushing. Number 11. Ichigo vs Kenpachi. This fight was the first one where Ichigo had fought a captain at his full power. And of course it was clear right from the start that Kenpachi is on a level where Ichigo can't even hurt him. Kenpachi makes a perfect opponent not only because of his strength, but also by what he represents. Kenpachi has no reason to fight and he doesn't have to have one, because fighting itself is his goal. On the other hand, Ichigo fights only for the sole purpose of rescuing Rukia. Also, Kenpachi refuses to look at his blade as a partner, symbolized by not even knowing its name. And that's the part where Ichigo's growth as a character can be seen. He finally learns to rely on his sword as a partner, symbolized by learning its name. The fight ends with a draw, showing that while it is possible for Ichigo to fight captain level opponents, he's still far from actually winning against them. However, Ichigo was still able to make Kenpachi seriously consider his sword as a partner, symbolized by asking its name, which is quite a serious accomplishment. Number 10. Kenpachi vs nnoira. A battle to the death between the two most bloodthirsty and fight maniac monsters in the show is bound to be epic. And the best part is that not only us, the viewers, but even these two enjoy the fight quite enthusiastically. And even though it's not so obvious, but these two people actually represent two different ways of fighting. Nnoira fights because he has no other option. As a hollow, his sole purpose is to devour other hollows and become stronger and stronger, until someone else does the same to him. On the other hand, Kenpachi fights because he chooses to and not because he has to. Another difference is that nnoira always kills his opponents, mainly because he hates the idea of the winner showing pity to the loser, and that of course includes the option where he's the one defeated. However, Kenpachi has a tendency to spare his opponents in hope that they will become a stronger and more exciting enemy that he can fight later. Number 9. Ichigo vs Grimmjow, the final fight. After being interrupted 2 times in a row, kidnapping the already kidnapped Inoue, forcing her to heal Ichigo and taking care of ulquiorra, Grimmjow can finally have his big fight with Ichigo. In this fight, Grimmjow symbolizes the destructive nature of beasts who tear apart anyone dare to look down upon them. He also refers to himself as the king, while Ichigo symbolizes the protective nature of friends and also the human nature that tries to repress his beastly instincts, and he also prefers equality over hierarchy. Grimmjow shows extreme hatred towards Ichigo's eyes, which symbolize him looking towards victory instead of the fight itself. Ichigo has no other option than to use his hollow mask, which is already a moral victory for Grimmjow. However, thanks to Orihime's peaceful and protective comments, Ichigo is able to settle his fight as a human, not as a beast, taking back the moral victory at the end. Number 8. Renji vs Byakuya. The fight between a noble and a beast, between rank and the fort. Or as Byakuya would say, like a monkey who wants to capture the moon after seeing its reflection in the middle of the lake. No matter how hard he struggles to capture that moon, he inevitably sinks to the bottom of the lake to no avail. The monkey of course being a symbol of Renji, while the moon symbolizes Byakuya. Renji thinks that by achieving his own bankai he became an equal enemy. However, having a bankai is not the only reason Byakuya is stronger than him, just as the reflection of the moon is not the moon itself. The fight does a great job displaying the two bankais and the difference in their powers, which makes a good comparison to the Ichigo vs Byakuya fight, which has a similar setup. Also, this fight is probably the first one where we can see how Ichigo can change people for the better. Renji loses the fight, but still earns Byakuya's respect. Number 7. Ichigo vs Aizen final fight. After about 100 episodes of we finally get to see a fight where even Aizen can be surprised. In this fight, Ichigo embodies determination while Aizen embodies arrogance. And let's just stop for a moment to appreciate how insanely badass this moment was. So aside from the long hair and the fancy new form, they also get insane powers that can blow away mountains with a single clash of the swords. Ichigo manages to surprise Aizen exactly 3 times, after which Aizen gets so angry that he becomes this horrific creature, and then he makes a city-sized explosion, and then Ichigo attacks, and now it was all part of Urahara's plan. And that's basically it. Aside from the gorgeous animation and the insane amount of hype, there's not really much to talk about in this fight. Number 6. Gin vs Aizen. This fight is, in my opinion, the most emotional fight in the whole series. It was foreshadowed many times before, but it still surprised everyone. In this fight, we can finally see Gin's true motivations. Gin decided to kill Aizen when he was a child, and for that goal, he threw away everything. His life, his love, and even his humanity. And after all these years, he finds out that it was all for nothing. What he sacrificed his life for was nothing more than a way for Aizen to get even stronger. But at least he can finally rest in peace, knowing that Ichigo can still defeat Aizen, as we saw in the previous part. Number 5. Aizen versus everyone. The battle between Aizen and literally everyone else. Many episodes about Aizen showing off his superiority. This fight is filled with tricks and twists, action and strategy, drama and horror. It wasn't a fight, it was a massacre. Aizen is insanely badass and overpowered. The main purpose is to remind us how evil and manipulative of a bastard Aizen is. Which of course makes it that much more satisfying to see Ichigo finally kick his ass. Number 4. Komamura and Hisagi vs Kaname. A fight where both sides fight for justice, and yet they fight for a different justice. Komamura believes in protecting people, while Kaname believes in revenge. He becomes a whole of himself to understand their hate for this world and to gain power. And neither justice is better or worse, they're just different. It's also worth noting that Kaname's blindness represents different things for the two. Kaname believes that until now he has been blind to how hollows sting, but now he became able to quite literally open his eyes. On the other hand, Komamura believes that Kaname was able to see justice more clearly when he was physically blind. Both of them are loyal to someone they believe walks the path of justice. Hisagi fights Kaname as his mentor and former captain, while Komamura fights him as his comrade. Number 3. Ichigo vs Byakuya final fight. Ichigo's entrance is already as intense as it could be, and he is more confident than ever. Byakuya seems to have the upper hand using his bankai, but after that comes the huge reveal that Ichigo had also learned bankai. Surprisingly, his bankai seems quite simplistic compared to the flashy ones we have seen so far. But after a few clashes, it becomes clear that his power is at least captain level. In this fight, Byakuya symbolizes order and nobility, while Ichigo symbolizes change and humanity. The fight is well executed, having dynamic action and a back and forth between the two. As time goes on, Ichigo's power weakens to the point where he is about to lose, but at that moment his inner hollow, which was foreshadowed many times before, awakens and takes control of the fight. Although he seems to dominate the fight, Ichigo refuses to win like this and tears off his mask. And finally we're at the climax of the battle, with both of them barely standing. They clash once again. Ichigo seems injured, but still manages to stand, while Byakuya admits his loss and tells Ichigo his reasons to act like he did. He believes that he as a noble can only demand others to follow the rules if he himself does that, so he swore to follow the rules. On the other hand, he swore to protect Rukia as his sister. Unable to do both, he chose to follow the rules. However, after seeing Ichigo's determination to go against the rules to save Rukia, shows him that there might be more important things than rules. Number 2. Ichigo vs Ulquiorra final fight. In this battle, Ichigo symbolizes the heart, which acts based on emotions, while Ulquiorra is the mind, which acts based on understanding and reasoning. Ulquiorra tries to make Ichigo give up because reasoning tells him that it's only logical that way, but Ichigo refuses to give up despite the odds, which eventually leads to his death. However, his instinct to protect Orihime awakens the inner hollow inside him. The hollow form represents brute force and beastly instincts. The unhuman, destructive power crushes anyone who gets in the way. Ulquiorra manages to stop the hollow, resulting in Ichigo gaining control over his body. After realizing what had happened, Ichigo refuses to win like this, but it's already too late for Ulquiorra, who slowly fades away as he dies. In his last moments, he remembers his conversations with Orihime and Ichigo and finally manages to understand human emotions. And number 1. Ichigo vs Ginjo final fight. The best fight in the whole series has to be this one. The camaraderie between Ichigo and Ginjo is pushed to its maximum because at that point Ichigo has no one else he could trust other than Ginjo. And his betrayal is soul-crushing. This is the first time in the anime where Ichigo completely breaks down mentally. He has no will to fight anymore. He's in the bottom of the ocean, chained, betrayed by everyone, waiting to die. But at that moment, he remembers the one thing he had wished for in his whole life: to protect. His mother, his family, his friends, everyone who's precious to him. He once again gathers his strength and stands up and shouts for his powers. And his determination reaches someone. Not Ginjo, but Rukia, who's finally there to support him and give him back his powers to fight. And she's not alone. All of the Shinigami stand by his side. The many people he had fought for are finally there to do the same for him. And now, filled with determination, he's ready to fight Ginjo. And that fight looks gorgeous. The animation is fast-paced and dynamic, and the two of them symbolizes everything. The old and the new generation, revenge and forgiveness, past and future, trust and doubt. Neither of them hates the other, rather they try to understand and respect each other. The tragic beauty of these two is that if their roles were reversed, they might have acted the same as the other, and they know that.